Hello again, everyone. Tom Nagorski in the Cipher Brief studio to talk today about the seismic changes that are underway in terms of the U.S.-Russia relationship, how they're affecting Ukraine and Europe and all the rest, but mostly how they are being received in Russia itself. And just to recap, because there's something new almost every hour now on this front. In the last week alone, President Trump has spoken to Russian President Vladimir Putin. His Secretary of State has begun negotiations with the Russians, with no Ukrainians and no Europeans at the table. And perhaps most important and surprising to a lot of people is how far those negotiations have gone, because they're clearly not just about the war, but there seems to be a whole new opening and engagement between Washington and Moscow, again, that has surprised a great many people. And finally, the latest news being that President Trump has lashed out against Ukraine's president, Volodymyr Zelensky, blaming him for the war. Our guest today is Stanislav Kucher, back in the studio with us, a longtime observer of Russian media, for a long time, a Russian television anchor himself who came to the United States 6 years ago and now is editor-in-chief of Samizdat Online. And Stan, I just wanted to start with a personal question, if I could, before we get to analysis. But as you've received and watched and heard the news of the last week, how do you take it? What's your own personal reaction?
Well, thanks for having me here, Tom. And my personal reaction could be described with just one word: disappointment.
Hmm.
My worst expectations are coming true. I don't know for a fact. And that's the main source of my disappointment and my concern, is whether Donald Trump is just making a mistake or is his strategy. And they have already made a deal with Mr. Putin, or not in past perfect, but in just past tense. They made a deal at some point earlier, and now they're following the terms of the deal. But definitely, it's a tactical victory for Putin. Hopefully, not his strategic victory.
Yeah. Now let's get to the stuff you watch, Stan. As I said in the introduction, so closely, and when I say Stan Kucher watches Russian media, watches sort of every corner of it and every, not just what's on television and so forth. How are they talking about these events that we've been talking about here of the last 6, 7 days?
Well, the Russian media are definitely welcoming the negotiations between the U.S. delegation and the Russian delegation in Al Riyadh, in Saudi Arabia. And also, I mean, they keep quoting Trump, especially whatever Trump says about Zelensky.
Hmm.
Uh, for example, like right now in front of me, I got an article by Komsomolskaya Pravda, Russia's most popular daily newspaper. It's both print newspaper and an online media. And so their headline says, Trump erased Zelensky to the ground, after Zelensky expressed his dissatisfaction with the fact that Ukraine was not a part of the negotiation in Saudi Arabia. And then another headline: Trump calls Zelensky dictator. The U.S. have changed their attitude to the war. The U.S. have changed, have 180 degrees changed their attitude to Russia and Ukraine. Ukraine, they now understand Ukraine started the war. By the way, that remark by Donald Trump that Zelensky started it, of course, was welcomed all throughout the Russian media world. I mean, every official, every Kremlin-controlled official media outlet keeps quoting Trump, and every popular pro-Putin blogger on YouTube. There still are pro-Putin bloggers on YouTube, by the way. On RuTube, which is a Russian version of YouTube, and on Telegram especially. You know, a lot of bloggers keep quoting Trump, saying that America has changed their attitude to Russia. and that's also this is something that I don't like the word hate, but I hate reading something like this because it's not about America, it's about Donald Trump. But they portray it the way that the American people, the America as a nation, America has changed its attitude to the war and to Russia. Also, it's important, it's really worth noting that I hate it when we just say America and Russia. Trump has changed his attitude to Russia because that's not quite accurate. He's changed his attitude to Putin, to Vladimir Putin, to Putin's Russia. And I wouldn't say that Russia is Putin's Russia.
Recognizing excellence in national security, the Cipher Brief Honors Dinner celebrates those who've made a real difference in protecting our nation. It's an unforgettable evening with top leaders in the field. Join us in honoring these remarkable contributions. Reserve your seat now at cipherbriefhonors.com.
Back to some of those headlines you just read. I mean, you and I have talked a lot over the past 3 years that this war, the big war, has been being waged. And for a lot of that time, all these propaganda outlets, several of which you just mentioned, they have had to, shall we say, invent certain scenarios to make things sound good. And sometimes that's been difficult and has involved a lot of falsehoods, I think it's safe to say. Now, several of those headlines you just read are not inventions, right? They're facts that the United States has changed its view, that the United States has I don't remember all the words, but that's a whole new world for them, isn't it?
Absolutely. And it's interesting. I mean, if there is anything amusing or entertaining about this situation, it's the question how those Russian media who had threatened and bloggers and influencers who had threatened to erase the United States to the ground from the face of Earth by Russian nukes, how now they will change their tune, how they will change their rhetoric. Because just literally a couple of months ago, I saw and heard, pictures of some Russian nationalistic movements carrying huge slogans portraying missiles, nuclear missiles, and inscriptions like "Let's bombard Washington, D.C., let's bombard the White House." And then even Vladimir Solovyov, you know who Vladimir Solovyov is. Let's remind our viewers, Vladimir Solovyov is Putin's top propagandist.
He's also one of the most popular or most seen, most viewed television personalities in Russia, right?
Absolutely. And like he has a daily show on Russian YouTube, on RuTube, and then he has a weekly political show on Russia's Channel 2, and pretty often he goes on there every night. He has a show that is called Evening with Vladimir Solovyov. So just a month ago, he described Donald Trump as, quote, a systematic enemy of Russia. And the United States is a systematic, as he put it, again, enemy of Russia, no matter who is in the White House. So anti-Trump rhetoric was also pretty strong when Trump was elected, and especially after Trump, you remember on the day of his inauguration, when he was signing one of those executive orders, he was asked a question about Vladimir Putin and Ukraine, and he said that Putin is destroying Russia. He should make peace unless he wants to destroy Russia, further sanctions. So Trump's rhetoric was pretty harsh back then, and so the next day, all of the Russian media were talking about Mr. Trump, who is an enemy of Russia. And now, of course, now they're so happy. So now they're just quoting Trump and saying actually their mood can be described as we have won. We have finally won this war. And it's really important. I think what you brought up a question first, that the negotiations in Saudi Arabia was not about was not about Ukraine. only, right? That's exactly the way Putin wants it to be seen. It's about U.S.-Russian relationship.
Mhm.
It's about Putin joining the club again.
Mhm.
That's
Mhm.
what Putin wants, and that's basically why he started the full-scale invasion in the first place in 2022. And
Mhm.
so right now, what he's doing is, I think he's ready to sacrifice pretty much everything just to get back to this club, into this club, just to sit with Donald Trump in his uh, Mar-a-Lago estate, right?
Mhm.
Just the way he had steak with George Bush at his ranch in Texas
Yep.
back in 2001. So that's what Putin wants. And again, to me, the major question right now is who's using who? If Donald Trump is using Putin, then what concessions have Putin promised him?
Yeah. No, that's the
On
question
what
that. Yeah.
terms? Yeah, I mean, has he promised him to I don't know, to fight China together
Yeah.
politically, economically, militarily, should need arise? What exactly has Putin promised Trump? Or he has not promised him anything. They just decided to run the world together, the way the Soviet Union and the United States ran the world back in the Cold War era. And again, if Trump agreed to that, then I don't understand why, because today's Russia, no matter how aggressive it is, it's a lot weaker economically and militarily in every sense of the word than the Soviet Union. It doesn't have as many allies, etc., etc. So the question is again, what Trump hopes to get from Putin uh, in return for
Yeah.
the huge favor that he's doing him right now.
Yeah, it's and of course we're guessing here at the motives and all that, but we probably will know soon. Last question, Stan. Then we've talked about how Putin can sort of spin victory out of anything. You just said the Russian media are claiming we have won, and we know that the Kremlin has a pretty good lock on the Russian media. Do we assume that that's going to be the narrative from the Kremlin to the Russian people going forward? That hey, back in the club, we get our deal, whatever we get, and this is a victory for us and for the nation.
Absolutely. Of course, this will depend on what happens next.
Yep.
Because, again, right now, the dialogue between Moscow and Washington has been renewed. But as far as the war in Ukraine itself is concerned, nothing specific was decided,
Hmm.
right? And Putin's his position is Yuri Ushakov's position is Putin's assistant, president's
Yep.
assistant on foreign affairs. So he said after the negotiation that we don't know when the meeting will take place. Definitely not in the next month, that was Ushakov said, and we have not agreed on anything specific. We just agreed to work together and so on. So I would say that Russian officials are being kind of more laconical, and they're kind of more cautious in assessing the results of the
Yep.
negotiations. But the Russian media again are celebrating.
Yep.
Russian media are celebrating, and a lot of Russian propagandists, by the way, are already planning their trips to the United States because they're really missing New York City restaurants. They're missing boutiques on Fifth Avenue. And their plan is, of course, to come here as victors, spend their money, because they have a lot, here in New York City.
And Stan Kucher, thank you so much. We're going to have to leave it there. Stan Kucher, editor-in-chief at Samizdat Online. We always appreciate your views and your insights. And as you say, we're going to have to watch for what comes next. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Tom.